This is my introduction to Sailing Wilson on YouTube. I own a 2013 Island Spirit catamaran, 38 foot in length, and I really love my boat. I'm sure you've heard this before, but please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and push on the notification bell. That'd help a lot. By the way, please share my videos with other people you know. I'm currently on the hard stand at Reback Island Shipyard, which is in the top middle of the photograph. Reback Island is a resort island just off the main island of Langkawi in Malaysia. Here's a Google Earth image of my boat just beside the blue dot on the hard stand. And here's a photograph of my boat just after I finished putting the copper coat on. I've still got a lot of work to do. Forgive me for my sins. It's been 3 weeks since my last confession on YouTube. I've had to go to the doctor for a slight surgery, and we go to the harbour store on Reback Island and borrow the keys and pay some money to hire a motor car. And this is me waiting outside near the ferries to get transported across from Reback Island to Chanang Beach. And this is the ferry taking us across there, and once we arrive there we get off the ferries and head for the car and then head for Kura Shopping Centre. We bought some parts from Langkawi Yacht Supplies as usual, and some parts and tools from HE Trading in Langkawi. Then I went to Dr. Boo's surgery and had a little bit of an operation, nothing dramatic. Then we went to Tao Sun supermarket and bought our weekly load of groceries and headed back with our second-hand new trolleys full of food. And these trolleys were given to us by a couple of friends because I broke my other ones. My wife prepares beautiful Chinese Malaysian food. That's why I've put on weight since she's been back on the boat. I haven't had a very good run with injuries. I've injured my shoulder and I had that little bit of a surgery, and the weather's been pretty nasty and we've been unable to do a lot of work because of my injuries, so it's been quiet for the last 3 weeks. What we have done is we removed the winch brakes and pulleys because we had this pretty bad water leak in that area underneath the pulleys and winch brakes. So here's the image of us removing them. As you can see, I shake a lot and it was quite difficult to get these things out, and they got stuck, of course, as usual, on everything that's glued in with Sicket Flex. Underneath the pulleys at the helm station in the starboard cabin there was an inspection hatch, and here is the plate that those bolts and nuts were screwed to, and that had to be also pried loose. You can see the heads of them, the bolts and nuts, and then that had to be cleaned up with a grinder and a steel brush, and it's stainless steel. And then we cleaned up the area. Here are the cracks in the fiberglass, and underneath the steel plate, the fiberglass deck where the bolts and screws are was also leaking water. Then I went through the process of repairing it by grinding out the rust and rot. And here are the winch plates, which looked good. I didn't even have to touch them, both of them were looking good, so I was happy with that. Here you can see the starboard cabin and the back wall on the stern of the boat, and the inspection hatch where I was doing all the work, and the water would run down that onto the bed and bedding. Up top on the deck I used a screwdriver to figure out where the hole was, and we drilled out the holes so that and had a cleaner surface. I ground out this area underneath the deck in two areas so that I could epoxy them over. I taped off after I'd cleaned up the top of the deck, and then I began the process of using a epoxy filler to fill those ground out areas that were leaking, and prepared the surface with a grinder. And likewise underneath, inside the helm station where the stainless steel plate was, I also used a epoxy filler to fill in the holes, and I had to make sure that I left enough room for the stainless steel plate to fit. Once I'd sanded it back, I screwed down the winch brakes and the pulley guides, and had threaded the lines back through them. And underneath you'll see that I've screwed in the nuts and bolts, and on the left you can see a bit of an angle where it had to fit in. And of course Sikaflex is a messy product, and in 30-degree heat it went off fairly quickly, and it was quite difficult to get the job done effectively and quickly. Those that have been watching my channel saw a video I did on creating a fuel polisher, and here it is in action, set up on the railing and connected to the 12-volt starter battery. And I pumped 100 litres of fuel out of the both tanks. This is the starboard tank, into 5 20-litre jerry cans, and I had to do it in stages because the half-inch hose wasn't big enough and created a bit of too much pressure on that pump. And just to make sure, I put it into an open bucket so that I could see the finished product, to make sure that it cleaned out the growth and water and dirt and muck, and it did a fairly good job. I was quite pleased with it. I used it again just to make sure to pump the fuel back into the tanks, so it got cleaned twice. I will be changing the hoses in some way and making a 3/4 outlet rather than the 1/2 inch. Since the COVID situation has caused the MCO to stop people from staying on the island, there's been less food in the rubbish bins, so the monkeys have been looking for other sources of food. And here's the young ones of the season destroying and chewing on my neighbour's GPS and radar. And here's the big male with his testicles hanging over the place, and he's watching over his flock. And what happens is they crawl onto our boat, whether we're on the boat or not, and we have to shoo them off. They're looking for food. And the young ones have got up my mast and ripped off and damaged my Garmin wind vane. So 1,500 Australian dollars, or 4,500 ringgit, down the tube. So I complained politely, of course, to the Malaysian staff through email, and they were quick to respond. And the next day, Abu and Lisa, supervising Abu, got up there and cut the branches off the palm trees so that the monkeys couldn't jump from the palm trees across to the different boats without too much difficulty. He was able to do that, and it's actually been very effective in the last couple of weeks. The monkeys have stopped using the trees and branches to jump onto my neighbour's boat and then onto my boat and be a nuisance. The male monkey is called Graham, and he's a bit of an annoyance. He actually is fairly aggressive, and I'm worried about him. When it's raining, we're unable to do any work, so we just tend to catch up on things on the inside of the boat and relax. And when it's not raining, and because of my sore shoulder, I've been relaxing in the chairs underneath my boat in the shade, so you can see the electric bikes that we use to get around. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of part 20 of our progress report on our haul out on Reback Island, Langkawi.